On guys, we got this little baby Fiat 500. If you're doing the brakes, it's very simple. The actual bolts holding on to the caliper are 13 millimeter. You will have to hold on to the pin with the 17 millimeter and then spin the bolt out, and you should be able to get the caliper off. To get the bracket out, it's 13 millimeter bolts back here. You won't be able to get a socket in, so just use a wrench and then whack it with a sledgehammer and it'll break the bolts free. As far as the rotor, if you want to remove the rotor, there's these little pins. 12 millimeter. You will have to break them loose. That's what's holding the rotor in place. And the easiest way to do that is just stick a screwdriver through one of the caliper holes, or one of the wheel. Fucking mosquitoes. Where I guess the wheel bolts go in. Just stick a screwdriver in there, and it's gonna rest up against the back. It's gonna rest up against the back there, so it won't move. Then you take a 12 millimeter wrench and just break them loose. They shouldn't be that tight. And they don't have to be extremely tight unless you want to deal with a rusty bolt later on. Now as far as compressing the caliper back, you will have to use that special tool to spin the caliper back. You can't just pry it back. So get yourself one of these little cubes. It's like a universal one. Alright, so I got both of those little pins out. Now let's see. And there she goes. Just whack it a couple times. And that's the old rotor. Now the issue with this, the issue with these, or when this happens and the brake just stays stuck, the pins on the caliper are perfectly fine. They move back and forth perfectly fine. So what happens is, when they fucking do the pads, they have a coat, like a paint coat, and it makes them a little bit thicker than normal. And so what they do is they just fucking force the pads in. If you force the pads in, the pads aren't going to be able to move back and forth when you press the brake, and they're going to stay in the same position, and they're just going to keep fucking rubbing on the rotor. The way around it is grab a grinder or something and just grind these edges down, all three sides, just a hair, and the pad should fit fucking perfect. They should slide in there perfect. You shouldn't have to beat on them or force them in. So, and to be honest, a lot of people fucking do that. Even people that should know better. But alright, that's how you change your pads and your rotors on this Fiat 500. Get it done, people, get it done. Alright guys, one more thing. When you put your tool in there to get the piston back in, turn to your right. If you turn to your left, your piston's gonna come out. So spin it to your right, and it should start going in. Good luck. Alright guys, so on this side I was having issues getting the piston to retract. It would just spin, so what I'm doing is I don't have a special tool for this to put pressure on it and spin it at the same time. So what I did is I put a regular brake clamp here right behind my cube, and then I'm sticking a screwdriver in here, turning it, and at the same time I'm turning the bolt on my little clamp, and it's pushing the piston in. And I guess that's the only way around it. You are limited to tools, so I thought this would help in case you run into the same problem.